Hi there, it's Matt Denning from Caboolture, Australia, reporting in with more progress on Kermit's boomerang restoration. This particular video will concentrate mostly on the restoration around the fuselage that's been going on over the last few months, particularly with the timber shell over the fuselage and how that interacts with all the metal edging and panels around it. So anyway, we'll get into it. Okay, so we'll just come and concentrate on some of the detail on the fuselage. So here on the port side we have a new aluminium panel that's replaced the original damaged panel that came with number 174 originally out of New Guinea. So the original panel was quite jagged and damaged up in this area, but fortunately this inspection panel here on the right hand top corner, which still has its original World War II earth brown paint on it, will be able to be recovered and used in the flying restoration. We also have a couple of inspection holes here. This upper one was to give access to the ethylene glycol tank to get rid of ice off the windscreen, which really didn't happen that often. And down below was the opening for the formation light. Come down a bit lower and we have the oil cooler exit door. So round on the front of the firewall there's a rectangular opening, and that was where some ducting that came off the oil coolers went through into some ducts on the inside of the aeroplane, and then that air that's passed through the oil coolers came out through this door. Now quite often during flight the door can be fully closed. As you see, there's still a gap here to allow the air to come through, but if it's a very hot day like it is here in Queensland today and you need to reduce your oil temperature from a quadrant inside the cockpit, you can open this door to wherever you want to control your oil temperature. Again, this is the original panel off number 174, still with remnants of its earth brown paint, and this will all be repainted and restored for the finished aeroplane. Moving back to this area, we've got the hydraulic access door in the side of the aeroplane. I've just taped it up here because, as you can appreciate, all these parts have only just been made. Some of them are primed, but they're still at their early fit-up stage. So none of this has been fully restored, ready to go on the airplane for the final time. So I'll just peel off some of this tape. And if we have a look inside here, you can see this panel has got quite a deep pressed panel on the inside, which gives the whole door some strength. There was also a rectangular panel that went in this area during the war. It was a 3/16 inch thick aluminium plate, which with a direct hit from a machine gun or a cannon from another aeroplane or from ground fire, it wouldn't probably stop very much, but at least it gave some deflective protection for hydraulic servos that were located underneath the hydraulic shelf just inside this door. So that plate will be going back in place there when this door restoration is completed. If I just come inside a bit, you'll see down the back there how the whole timber shell covers the fuselage frame. We also have quite a thick steel armour plate here, which tracks right up to the head armour plate itself as well. And the reason why the fuselage hasn't been fitted out yet with any systems, any of the castings or fuel tanks, anything of that nature, is because we really wanted to get maximum access inside the airframe so that we can get this timber shell fully fitted out and drilled for all the different brackets. And then once that's all done, the shell will come off and we can populate the fuselage frame with lots of parts. So just around here as well, on the inside of this left-hand panel, you can see the flare holder for flares that the pilot could release if necessary to attract attention. So that flare box is original Boomerang as well, that's been reset up back there with brackets to hold it off the side panel, just as it was in the original installation. There's also this lever system here just on the inside, which is again all part of the oil cooler access door operation on the outside. So from this point up here, lever went back to the hydraulic shelf into a quadrant where it could be activated. So we've got another little inspection panel just here, and that was to get access to a box just inside the fuselage here, which contained the external power socket. A little bit higher up, we have an opening here for the footstep in the aeroplane. So in the side of the timber shell here, we have the opening for the footstep. And this was a fabricated aluminium structure, which I have a sample of just here, that inserted into this hole. And basically the pilot would step into this part, which would open down to the horizontal to allow him to step up into the cockpit over the canopy rail here and down inside. So on the inside of this assembly, you can see a couple of springs there. They actually also get duplicated on this side to give enough spring tension to return the step to the closed position once the pilot steps inside. A little bit of a block of timber there just to rest on this bit of an aluminium shelf to not damage any of the aluminium as the pilot's weight goes onto the footstep itself. It's also spread a fair way between the internal and external plates to make allowance for the thickness of the timber shell in this area. So that whole piece goes in there. We actually have all the new pieces to go on have already been made. So we have the surround, there's the actual footstep itself that will go into that hole, and of course that will go down flat as the pilot steps on and come back to neutral again. So everything for the new footstep is all here inside this box. All the hinge pieces, the springs, everything's been made, and it'll be continued on as an assembly until it's completed. So if we go up a little bit higher, we have up here this hatch, which all looks a bit bland at the moment because it's just one piece of aluminium. As you can see the marking on it for a cutout that will occur in this panel, and there'll be a curved metal piece on the inside, and this whole thing is called the rear windows part of the Boomerang. It's also on a hinge, so you can see the piece of hinge sitting up here. Once again, this is all just fabricated material that's being developed into the final parts before anything's going to be finally painted and installed. If I lift up this panel, which is just, in this case for now, just a single sheet of aluminium, you can see the hinge on the inside, and also this bow structure that gives some support to the front of the door when it's closed, and the other formed panel on the other side here, which is actually an original piece that will be fully restored in due course. So just looking back down through the rear fuselage, you can see the timber shell and how that's all constructed, as well as the tubular steel frame that all the standoff brackets come from to hold the timber shell in place. So those brackets will be populated further as we get on with this restoration. Down in the belly of the monocoque here, you can see an oval shaped hole, and that's where the Williamson F-24 camera was able to take shots vertically of any ground features or items of interest that the Boomerang pilots saw that could be reported back during wartime service. As we come back out of this radio hatch area, you can see on the side here the inlet for the fuselage fuel tank. So this casting and internal housing was accessed through this inspection panel on the outside, and the fuel hose could be put down with the nozzle inside through this filler neck, which then went down a rubber hose into the fuselage fuel tank that was located just in this zone here. Come down a little further, we have ZUS fasteners, 3 of them, that will go into this channel piece. That picks up on the bottom of this hinge door. So those will be incorporated into this new panel as it's developed. And just to give you an idea of what the original panel looked like, I'll just rest this down here on the ground so you can see the D-shaped cutout in the outer skin, some of the original stenciling down the bottom, radio equipment inside. If I turn that around, you'll see that it also has a press panel on the inside here. It's not very deep, but it was enough to give this panel some strength. You can see also where the original ZUS fasteners were located along the bottom of this edge to enable it to be locked down. There's also a remnant here of a bit of channeling on the side where the perspex for the outside of this window was held. Okay, so moving further aft along the fuselage, we have these 2 access doors here. The larger one on the right hand side is for access to the oxygen bottle. So I'll just put that back and we'll have a look inside. Once again, these are just individual parts that have been primed and treated. They're only Cleco pinned together. Nothing's on here for the final time, but it gives you an idea of how things go together. So we have this long joggled strip up the top, which is what 3 ZUS fasteners went into. So here's an original one showing you how those ZUS fasteners, which from this side is just a spring that the receptacle that's mounted into the door goes into the spring, 90-degree turn, and you've fastened that particular ZUS fastener. So if we look inside this area, we can see here the saddle that the oxygen bottle will sit in. All that original system will go back in to make this historically relevant when the aeroplane's finished. Similarly, the port here that we talked about before for the Williamson F-24 camera, there'll be a complete camera assembly that'll go inside all this area here, picking up all the rails and mounts that it had originally during the war as well. So it'll all go back in as it was in the 1940s. If we look further back in the rear fuselage, we can see this cross tube, and that gave allowance for a lifting tube to go right through the fuselage. If we pop back out again, have a look just down over here, we've got this access hole which is duplicated on the starboard side of the aeroplane as well. We've actually made up a little cover panel there which will screw over this later, but that effectively is a hole right through the back of the aeroplane that a lifting bar can be put through to help raise the tail of the aeroplane if that's needed for some maintenance. So if we just go forward from this door, we've got this smaller door here, and this is actually a first aid kit door that was added to the Boomerangs when the F-24 cameras were added into this part of the aeroplane, where the first aid kit used to be located down in this amongst the stringers of the lower rear fuselage monocoque here. So this little door, it's hasn't been finally fixed to the airframe yet, which is why I've got this tape up here in the corners. If I just undo the latch and lift this door out of the road, so it would hinge up normally, but I'll just take it out of the way. It's inside this space here that you would find all the first aid supplies that the pilot might need in case he has a forced landing somewhere, he's injured. There's a burn dressing here, and this one says a standard dressing. There would have been all sorts of gauze, scissors and other materials inside of this area that would have been packed with first aid supplies. I guess these days, if you're caught short at an airfield with weather for a few days, you probably need to have something like this.
Naked in Jamaica.
That you can take with you as an emergency to get you by those few days when you're stuck on the ground. Alright, moving further back. We have the saddle fillet back here, which is in the process of being finally fitted in place, so it sits down nicely on the back of the turtle deck, across the horizontal stabilizer here and up onto the fin. So this is a very complex shaped aluminium panel which Adam is currently working on. Alright, so here we are with Adam.
G'day, Adam. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, so Adam's actually come along to help with a lot of the metal wheeling on Kermit's Boomerang, and we're just sorting out the saddle fillet down by the tail, so you can see the tail fin up here, horizontal stabilisers out here, and even on this old wartime photo you can see the area, as I sort of come in there, where the swing fillet is between the fuselage and the tail planes. Yeah, so yeah, please Adam, tell us what you're up to today.
So today we're up to getting this rear section fit into the plane.
Yep.
It's an extremely complicated amount of shapes coming together. So you've got the side wing profile, the top wing section, and the body fillets all meeting into one intersection. And the first assumption we came along with is it'd have a streamline from here to the back. But because you've got this profiled section from the top leaning down and flaring outwards, it actually gets to a point about here and comes back out again.
It's sort of like a no man's land point.
Yeah, so it's sort of like a no man's land point. So it's a very questionable area. What was actually going on through here? So we had to map all the lines out from where all these points intersected and where they start to change from being just like a straight line and start to curve into each of the panels that intersect.
Yeah, so you've started marking some crayon marks on there, some lines.
Yeah, so they're our points where it goes from curving in one direction and starts to flip back the other way.
Okay.
And you can see it's a bit of like a topography of the whole tail section.
Yeah. So just explain the individual lines if you can, Adam, what you've marked on there.
Sure thing. So this first line down here is where this the side wing section comes in, where it transitions. We've got the main body where it meets the front, and at this curvature point, so it comes from the front here, curves in right towards this middle section, where it all sort of sucks in together, and then pulls back out as it meets this top line curving into it. So you get this like S-bend kind of section through here, which at first, when you first look at it, you don't quite see it, but as you study it more, it starts to stand out more and more.
Yep, yeah. So pretty much the segments of aluminium you're dealing with here, they're cut in individual pieces, so that with a bit of overlap at the moment. So once you're happy that it's sitting where you want it to sit, you'll be able to trim those back and weld the pieces together. That's
right. And we've got these individual pieces, trying to minimise them down to just one transition of metal.
Yep.
So before, because you've got all these different planes all meeting together from different points.
Yeah.
If you move this point here, it'll move the top of the wing section and back here and up to the front here as well.
Yeah, unintended consequences.
Unintended consequences. So by separating it into these individual parts, we can isolate it down to, if I move this section here, nothing happens over here.
Yeah.
So now that we can get this piece fitting, meeting at the wing edge and meeting at this front plane.
Yep.
Making sure that all these sections are correct. And then have this back section doing the same thing. It's aligned to this profile, aligned to the wing section. And by the time we overlap the two pieces, we can just do our final cut line and know that everything else is perfectly in place.
Yep, great. And also the terrific thing we have happening now is we've got Kermit's final construction, horizontal stabilisers in place, Kermit's fin, where you have a panel back here that's an original Boomerang one of the correct shape, and of course we have the timber shell, which gives us all the correct profiles here. So everything surrounding this panel is now the final parts that will be in place. So this is actually going to be trimmed and fitted so that it will, when it is finally ready to go on for the final painting and final positioning, will actually just slot in there and everything should screw up nicely. All right, well thanks very much Adam, and we'll follow you through as you go along.
Awesome. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, so all these panels back here have all been made from fresh, based on original panels, including the tail wheel boot fairing here. We actually have the original tail wheel assembly from A46174 that came out of the jungle, so it's still supporting the airplane for now in this period where it's just a fuselage. and it allows it to be moved around. So here we have the back of the panelling for the tailwheel boot. Again, the slot for where the rudder cables come through. And right along the edge of the monocoque here, we have this channeling coming through. You can see the section of the channel as it picks up and runs along through the fuselage, from which all the other stand-up brackets go to as well. And we have this strip running right across the front of the lower monocoque here, which picks up all the wing fillets that will come off, sweep up off the wing centre section, and also sweep back towards the rear fuselage. So all these small holes here will be rivets that will go through the timber shell inside, and the metal channeling on the other side of that. The lower part of this joggle strip takes anchor nuts to pick up all the wing fillets. So as we come back around the tail planes here, we have hinges on the back which pick up the elevators in 3 points. Same on the other side. We also have the rudder hinge brackets 1, 2 and 3 that pick up there. There's access here for the light on the tail for both sides. There's also an access panel to get inside for where the servo tab actuator will be located, and that comes out through this hole in the back of the fin to actuate the servo tab on the rudder. We have a similar setup on the starboard tailplane here, where we have an access panel that will go to the actuator located inside, with one part of that actuator coming out through this hole to actuate the servo tab. The port elevator is actually a trim tab, so it doesn't have the hole coming through it. It works off a different system of cables coming out through here around a pulley and then off inside the elevator itself. So just different systems for different requirements. You can also see down through here just some of that channeling and panels that's inside there to finish off all this metal area down by the tail of the aeroplane. As another example, we have this bit of channeling, which if I put it over where it belongs, sits in there. So you can see it's got a metal strip coming forward of it, which is this metal strip running down here. Underneath these panels is this other joggled area with these screw holes through here. And on the inside you can see it's a formed channel. This one's still got all the original anchor nuts on it, and that all helps to pick up these panels on the back, as well as lock it into the timber shell on the front. Another bit of original fillet underneath here just to help with some shape. And this particular side we'll be getting some more work yet, so that all this will sit down nicely onto the tailplane, onto the fuselage, and sweep back onto the tail. The channeling along the starboard side is different to the port side, in that on this side we have quite a large metal area to allow for the hot exhaust gases coming back out of the exhaust pipe, with that exhaust pipe being located within this recess here on the starboard side. Coming up a bit higher, we have the fixed rear window, this one having the formed D panel again. This is an original part, as you can see by the part numbers stamped into it there. It's still requiring restoration yet. It's only had some work done a long time to it ago, and that'll all be restored properly and finished off. The canopy rail on this side of the timber shell is brand new, because most of the canopy rails were torn off, particularly through this area, when this rear window assembly was pulled off the aeroplane. It would tend to break off the canopy rail there as well. We have armrests inside here, the left hand side armrest and the right hand side. The right hand side having a rectangular cutout in it, which was a map case. So there'll be a canvas map case that will be inserted into this area. In a similar way to the port side, we have a metal cockpit panel here on the starboard side. This one again has been manufactured in accordance with the original samples we have, and we've been lucky enough that this particular inspection panel here, which you can see has booster coil engraved into it, which was done in the factory during the war, that gives access to the booster coil inside the electrical box that's inside that panel. And this is the original panel also from Boomerang A46-174 that operated in Guinea during the war. So that's some of the original foliage green as well that's sitting on there. This side, the old formation light's been put in place, and there's a similar one on the other side. The lens that sits in here when this is all restored will be a dark blue tending to violet colour. So there we pretty much have the Boomerang fuselage at this stage. As I said, all these parts have just been made so that they actually populate the whole area. They're all clear-coat in place at this stage. You can see quite a few clear-coats running back through here. So it's at least set up for those parts to be finely tuned before they're deburred, treated, primed and ready to go on for the final time. So I hope you've enjoyed this video on the building up of the external surfaces of the timber shell and the metal edging around the fuselage for Kermit's Boomerang. And we'll produce some more videos as time goes on and as this restoration progresses. Bye for now. I've decided to put a bit of a story together so you have some background information on how this whole trip unfolded and why it all happened. To start with, we've got a map here that shows mainland New Guinea, Papua New Guinea, and off to the side is a kidney-shaped island over here, which is New Britain. So that is the island, New Britain, that we actually went to for this trip. In December 1942, the Japanese invaded New Britain. Cape Gloucester was occupied by the Japanese from December 42. A year later, the US 1st Marine Division in December 43 landed in this area, and there was some very heavy fighting and they started to push the Japanese back. In January 1944, number 4 Squadron RWF arrived into Cape Gloucester airstrip, and they operated Wirraways and Boomerangs from that location. Now our story centres around one of the pilots of 4 Squadron by the name of Ken Linklater, and Ken was sent up to Cape Gloucester in February 1944. So in this particular picture we have a chap here with the name of Ronald Ray being indicated. Also down here, still in the second row, we have Ken Linklater himself. On the 5th of May 1944 he was assigned to fly Boomerang number 85 from Cape Gloucester in company with 2 other Boomerangs, these being serial A46-174, which is Kermit's Boomerang, and another serial number A46-138. So the 3 aircraft departed Cape Gloucester early in the morning, approximately 8:15 AM, and started their coastal patrol along the northern face of New Britain. So I have here what's called a confirmatory memorandum, which is an Air Force letter, and it deals with a particular incident that happened on the 5th of May 44. Reads as such: at 9:15 AM on the 5th of May, Boomerang aeroplane A46-85 from B Flight, Cape Gloucester, New Britain, Captain Flying Officer K.A. Linklater, engaged on an operational tactical reconnaissance of Hoskins Galliola village area, New Britain, and was seen by the accompanying pilots to hit the tops of high trees while strafing the area. By flying over the spot, it was observed that both wings were torn off the fuselage, the engine had been torn out and was burning some distance away, and the fuselage was crumpled. A request was made to US 40th Division to send a patrol in to be investigated. However, as the plane is in enemy territory, it is doubtful that any result will be available without delay. The pilot of A4685 was observed by the accompanying pilots to pull up very sharply at high speed and to turn the aeroplane on its side in an attempt to avoid the trees. So the 3 aeroplanes involved were A4685, flown by Ken Linklater, which was the aircraft that crashed into that tree. The 2 other aircraft were A46138, flown by George Lilly, and also the aircraft which is now Kermit's Boomerang, A46174, was on that day flown by Ronald Ray. So all of the indications that I had from the Air Force file was that the aeroplane had crashed in a village called Galawale, and that is located just to the east of Hoskins Airfield. I actually contacted Alan Linklater in 2019, the son of Ken Linklater. Alan had some limited information on his father's service life, but not very much. And through my research of Kermit's Boomerang number 174, I'd come across this correspondence to do with the crash of number 85, and decided to follow up to see if I could still contact Alan Linklater, Ken Linklater's son. So Alan actually travelled up to Caboolture. He's been there a couple of times, and with the original fuselage of Kermit's Boomerang A46174 on hand, from which usable parts are being removed to incorporate into the airworthy restoration, Alan was able to see a lot of the original parts from 174, Kermit's Boomerang, which was the aircraft that accompanied A4685 on that actual mission back on the 5th of May 1944. So Alan has even had the opportunity of sitting in the fuselage of A46174 that Kermit owns. This airframe still had the original seat in place as well. So that was the seat occupied by Ronald Ray, who had written out that original memorandum to describe what had happened that day with the loss of the aircraft and the loss of the pilot Ken Linklater. We actually started to discuss whether it'd be worthwhile travelling up to the village that his father had crashed in on New Britain in 1944, just to see if any remnants of the aeroplane might still be there, and just for Alan to actually visit the site where his father lost his life. The people of Galawale had heard of a crash during the war, but it wasn't in their village. So his elders spoke to the elders of neighbouring villages, one of them being Gaviva village, further along the east from Galawale. And the chief of that village, Sebastian, confirmed that yes, part of their village history was that an aeroplane had hit some trees there during the war and crashed into their village. The villagers realised that he was part of the Allied forces that were trying to liberate their island from the Japanese imperial forces that were occupying it. So they knew he was a person of high esteem and should be treated with great respect. So they removed his body from the seat of the Boomerang number 85, and where it had crashed was pretty much at the head of the village cemetery. And they buried Ken Linklater initially in a grave not far from the Erema tree, and not far from the fuselage itself either. So we have here a photo from May 1944, taken a few days after the crash. It's a little difficult to work out what the photo is showing, but essentially the Boomerang fuselage is in this area, is this part here. You can actually see some vines coming up over the fuselage, which were part of what caught it and brought it to the ground. Just off to the side here, I've noted the gravesite cross. So you have a cross here that's erected just not far from the fuselage. There's some line work I've produced in green around here, which shows one of the open hatches in the port side of the fuselage. And further back I've drawn a red line, which is the demarcation between the white paint and the camouflage paint. So if I show you a picture of a full boomerang that's on this side, you can orientate yourself to the fuselage. So the cockpit was in this region, the centre body, and you have the remains of the horizontal stabilisers here and one of the elevators lying on the ground. Photo here of another 4 Squadron Boomerang painted in the same colours as Ken Linklater's Boomerang A4685. So in this case we have Boomerang A46152. You can see the green line work around the rear hatch on the port side of the fuselage, as well as the red line demarcating the camouflage and the white markings at the tail. So this Boomerang photograph was taken essentially at the same time as the crash of Ken Linklater's aeroplane. I have here another photo which shows more clearly the cross that was erected. It actually had the words Linklater inscribed across the horizontal, and the head armour plate from the Boomerang cockpit, which had detached during the crash, was also used at the head of the grave that was dug. So this photo was taken within days of the crash at Guinea in May 1944. When we actually visited the village of Guinea, the chief and many of the people of the village had prepared the same site where that grave had been. So this was the grave site of Ken Linklater for the days that he spent in Guinea before his body was exhumed and eventually laid to rest for the final time in the Lay War Cemetery on the New Guinea mainland. So Alan Linklater here, and Sebastian, the chief of Guinea village, and many others from the village as well, come to pay their respects, and they felt very honoured that the son of the pilot had come to their village all the way from Australia to pay his respects to Alan's father, who had died there just over 80 years previously. There's also other Boomerang parts that remained in the village as well. This is a wartime photo of a Boomerang engine, here the R1830 engine, and engine mount as it's about to be mounted into the fuselage of this aircraft on the factory floor. So with that in mind of the engine, the stainless steel dishpan around here, and all these legs coming off of the tubular engine mount, which connect to 4 points on the front of the fuselage frame, what is still in existence in the village is this large piece of the Boomerang's engine from A4685. The stainless steel dishpan is still there, as well as these legs going back to where it once connected with the fuselage frame. So it was a pretty amazing trip all around. Hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much.